Hello, Joe Salerno here again for EDUC 224. Um, I wanted to kind of go over that's my dog in the background playing. Um, talk about bias and stereotypes and how it might reflect into um, into the classroom. Give you some definitions of the two. First, I had an assignment, and I'm going to have to clean up this thing. I noticed when I copied it over to type, I noticed two typos. So I want you guys to do a detailed picture of a scientist. Um, Time limit, you don't have to have a time limit because in classroom I gave 30 minutes. I want a detailed picture of a scientist. I'm not going to judge you on your artist or being an artist, but I want to detail better what society pinpoints as a scientist. On the back sheet of paper, I want you to write about your feelings of science in at least a paragraph, and where does these feelings come from, and then give me at least a paragraph. Color, do everything. I want everything, and we'll compare that at Tuesday's class. My first definition we look is a bias, a strong opinion or feeling formed beforehand based on how you were raised, sometimes without thought or reason. I use the example, everyone knows that blonde hair is the best. Well, I have a brownish with a reddish tint. I think that's the best. You guys might have brown, red, polka dot. Now you might think that your hair is the best. I even see blue occasionally. They might think their hair is the best. So it's a bias. The common one I like to hear too is blondes have more fun. Well, I have brown and red hair. I like to have fun. So that's kind of like something that with a bias you will hear or see. And you hear that sometimes in the classroom from your students and your fellow colleagues. I use an example. I was talking to a friend of mine who plays in the local symphony orchestra, and and how they pick people to play instruments, new musicians, music, and etc. They mainly, at one time, choose males over females. But they had to take this bias out because there's some females that play instruments as well and sometimes better than some other males and vice versa. We know that. So, how to make sure they're not biased? They look at the performers that they only listen to their music. Ratio males and females is more balanced now to this change because they just listen to the music. Now, you might have to play afterwards to see, but that's how they. So maybe they 5, 6 pieces of music, and they pick maybe the top 3, and then top 2 or top 1 out of that their piece of when they play. A stereotype is when people are characterized based on some feature they have, most commonly race, gender, or religion, and perhaps today and the time, one of the biggest stereotypes is Muslims. We've seen that in the news media. Just recently, Donald Trump wanted to bar Muslims to come in the United States. There's some other ones that I've heard. All African Americans are better in sports than Caucasian. It's a stereotype. Um, you have Larry Bird, who was an excellent basketball player. You have Michael Jordan, all played basketball. So there's another stereotype. You see that. Um, another one I found in my notes is when I talk about the difference between bias and stereotypes is that bias is a personal preference. And like or dislike, especially when the tendency interferes with the ability to be impartial and unprejudiced or objective. Um, but you have on the other hand, the stereotype is a perceived idea. It attributes certain characteristics, general characteristics of members of a class or a set. Um, I This was one I saw in my old district. Is you think all Asians are smart? Well, we had Burmese, their refugee status, and they were bright and smart. But they were smart, but I mean, they got similar grades as my Caucasian students. I can show it to you. Now, did I have a couple bright ones? Yeah, I had bright ones with my Caucasians. I also had 30% African American. I had a very, very bright African American. So that's a stereotype. Now, I heard this one too. White man can't dance. That is a stereotype. Now, my kids saw me dance, and they said I was sorry. They also said that I was sorry about basketball. Now, if you compare it to me, I don't know if that would really be a great definition of stereotype, but you heard it. And, you would have occasional dances, and they said, I heard that white boy doesn't know how to dance. And I'm like, well, okay, why? So, but if you hire an agent for a job that also has a equal qualified African American or Caucasian, the stereotype is, oh, they're not going to be as smart. The Caucasian or African American is not going to be smart because we know the Asians are really, really bright. They have a hardworking standard. Well, there's a stereotype right there, and a biased. So I used those as examples of where we see stereotypes and biases. Will it change? It does. It does. I mean, it changes over time. It changes with education. If in your classroom, if you can mold their mind to get away from bias and stereotypes and be more diverse in their thinking, you could. And it's funny. I look at my kids now. There is a more diverse way of thinking in, especially at the elementary and middle school, compared to myself, over like 20, 25 years ago. Bias is a term used to describe a tendency and preference towards a particular perspective, ideology, or result, especially when tendency interferes with the ability to be impartial, unprejudiced, or objective. And you're going to compare this to a stereotype. Stereotype is a preconceived idea that attributes certain characteristics to all members of a class or act. So they take a group as a whole. The term is often used with a negative it's a negative point of view connotation when referring to a very overall simplified demeanor assumption. It's really kind of pulled to the extremes in a stereotype. So that is my explanation for the PowerPoint. Make sure we do the scientist, and we will compare that with what you guys think what a scientist is. To me, anyone who teaches science is a scientist. So have a good weekend, and I'll see you Tuesday. Have a great weekend, and again, happy Friday. I hope it's not going to snow again. See you later. Bye-bye.